How does a man get demoted to a stranger at a party he paid for? I found out the answer holding a serving tray in my own son's borrowed banquet hall on the proudest night of my youngest child's life. My name is on the deed to the house that hall sits behind. My son told 80 people I was the catering help and to use the side door. And my daughter, the one in the cap and gown, looked at her plate and said nothing. I set the tray down. I did not raise my voice. I just looked at the quiet woman seated alone by the front door, the one nobody had bothered to greet, and I gave her the smallest nod. Her name is Adaizi. I will tell you at the end why she had flown 1,100 miles to sit in that chair and why she stood up the moment I nodded. But for now, you only need to know one thing. My son introduced me to that room as the help, and he had no idea the most powerful person in it was there because of me. I am 60 years old. I have been a father for 34 of them and a widower for 9. I tell you that first because everything in this story runs through those 3 facts, and because I want you to hear the voice telling it and know it belongs to a man. A man who has carried a lot of trays in his life and never minded the carrying until the night the carrying meant something it was never supposed to mean. My name is David Ellison. I had 2 children by blood and a 3rd by promise, and on the night I am telling you about, all 3 of them were in the same room, and only 2 shared my name on a piece of paper, and the one who didn't was the only one in 80 people who stood up for me. I'll get there. I'll tell it the way it came at me, slow, and let you stand where I stood. Where I stood 3 months before the party was at my own kitchen table on an ordinary Tuesday evening, when my older son Marcus came in without knocking and sat down across from me like a man with an appointment. Marcus comes to my kitchen table the way weather comes. You don't invite it, it arrives. He had a folder under his arm and that warm look on his face he gets when he wants something, the look that has been making people open doors for him his whole life.
Dad, I've been thinking about Nadia's graduation.
So have I said. I've been putting a little by. I want it to be a good night for her.
How much is a little?
I didn't answer that right away. I am a careful man, and careful men learn early not to say a number out loud at their own kitchen table without knowing why the question was asked. Enough for a nice dinner somewhere, I said. A restaurant, a back room, a cake.
A back room. He said it the way you'd repeat a word a child made up. Dad, she's the first of your real kids to walk across a stage. The first one. You want to put that in the back of a restaurant next to somebody else's anniversary?
I want to put it somewhere she'll remember.
Then let me handle it. The Marwick. You know the Marwick, the big hall on Linden, the brick one. 80 guests. A real caterer, a head table, a banner with her name in silver, champagne. The whole thing done right, the way these people do it.
Which people?
People with money, Dad. The kind I'm trying to do business with this year. Half my future is shaking hands at that party, and the other half is my sister getting the night she earned. It can be both. Let it be both.
I looked at my son across the table where his mother used to sit, and I felt the old pull, the one a father never fully gets free of, which is the wish to believe the best version of your child is the true one. And what would all that run? I said.
Don't worry about the number. Worry about whether you trust me to get it right. He opened the folder, turned it toward me, slid it across the wood. Here's the thing. I've already got an account set up. It's how I run the family stuff now, the dues, the gifts, the things that come up. You put the funds in there, I make all the calls, I sign all the papers, I deal with the hall and the caterer and the deposit. You don't lift a finger. You show up that night and you're a proud father and you don't stand in a single line. For once in your life, Dad, let somebody else do the standing in line for you.
How's the business doing, Marcus? I said. The brokerage.
Great. Why?
No reason, a father asks.
It's great, Dad. Best year I've had. That's the whole point. These people I'm bringing, they're how next year gets bigger. So really you'd be helping me too. 2 birds.
And it'll be in her name, the night. It'll be Nadia's.
Whose else would it be?
And you won't need anything from me but the money. No papers, nothing to sign, just the money.
Just the money. Maybe a signature here or there for the deposit. The hall wants a guarantor on file, that kind of thing. but I'll bring it to you. You won't have to read a word of it. It's all boilerplate. You trust me, right?
I want to tell you I heard the trap in it. I didn't. There were two lies sitting on my kitchen table that night. That the business was great, and that the papers were boilerplate. And I caught neither, because what I heard underneath them was my son offering for the first time in years to carry something for the family instead of taking something from it. A father will buy that sound at almost any price. All right, I said. All right, I'll put the funds in, and I'll sign your deposit thing.
That's all I need.
And I did. Over the next weeks, I emptied 2 years of careful saving into the account my son had set up to run the family, and he made the calls, and he signed the papers, and on the booking sheet at the Marwick Banquet Hall, in the line that asks who reserved the room, the name is not David Ellison. The name is Marcus, with my money. That is the smaller of the two things he did with my name that season, and I didn't even know it was a thing yet. So when I tell you I paid for the party, understand exactly what I mean. Every dollar that bought that room came out of an envelope I'd filled for my daughter, and not one piece of paper in that building said so. My son had spent 3 months arranging it so the gratitude would flow to him, and he'd done it with money I handed him, smiling, across the table where his mother used to sit. If your son offered to take the whole weight of a family event off your hands, the money, the booking, the paperwork, all of it. Just sign here, just trust me. Would you have heard a kindness? Or what I should have heard? Tell me. I have turned it over 1,000 nights and still couldn't tell you which of us was the fool. Marcus is 34, taller than me, and he wears his clothes like an argument he's winning. He runs a small brokerage, houses mostly, out of a storefront with his name in the window in a font he picked himself, and for 6 years it made just enough to let him act like it made a great deal more. He enters a room and the room becomes his. People like him for the first 20 minutes and trust him for the first 20 days, and I had loved him for 34 years through that wall of charm the way you love a son, which is to say, without the option of stopping. What I did not know that Tuesday, what I would not know for 3 more months, was that the brokerage was dying. The window with his name on it was going dark. His creditors had stopped taking his calls and started sending paper, and somewhere in a drawer, a clock was running out on my son that I could not hear ticking. I tell you that now so you'll understand later that he was not a cartoon. He was a man in a good jacket with the floor going out from under him. There's a thing it explains at the end, and a thing it doesn't, and the difference is the whole story. Now move me forward 3 months, to the night itself, to the front step of the Marwick at 8 o'clock, in a jacket I'd had pressed that morning, holding a card I'd written by hand. The card said the plain thing: I'm proud of you. I have always been proud of you. Love, Dad. I had it in my breast pocket over my heart, the way you carry a thing you mean. The hall is a long, low building of pale brick with a row of glass doors and a circle drive where the good cars come in. Behind it, past a strip of grass and a chain-link line, is a quieter street of older houses, and the third house on that street, the brick one with the porch I rebuilt myself 2 summers running, is mine. Paid off. Not a dollar owed on it to any living soul. Hold on to the geography. The grand rented hall in front, my small owned house behind, staring at each other across a fence. Because by the end you'll understand the whole night was a fight about which of those 2 buildings a man gets to keep. Through the glass the lights were gold, and the room was already full of the low roar a happy room makes, and I could see the head table with its white cloth, and the banner with Nadia's name on it in silver letters, and I felt, on that step, the simplest and best feeling a father gets. My child had reached a thing. I had helped her reach it, quietly, the way I'd helped reach most of the things in that room, and nobody needed to know the quiet part for it to be true. I reached for the door, and Marcus came out through it before I could open it, fast, the way you come out to stop a man rather than greet him.
Dad, hey, you made it.
Wouldn't miss it, I said. I brought her a card. I wanted to give it to her before the...
Okay, listen. He had a hand on my arm already. Not a son's hand. A steering hand, the kind you put on a man to turn him. It's crowded in there. And it's a lot of important people for Nadia tonight, business friends, people I need on my sides this year, so let's keep it simple.
I just want to hand her the card, Marcus. 2 minutes.
You can give her the card later, after, when it's quieter. Right now, I need to keep the room moving, and that's not really a you thing tonight. Simple how, I'll show you.
Simple how? I said again, because he hadn't answered it, and the hand on my arm had not let go.
You're great with the catering side, right? You always are. You're a help around the edges guy. That's your gift. You don't need a head table to feel useful. So here. He turned, took something off a hook just inside the door, the hook the catering crew used, and put it in my hands.
It was an apron. White, cheap, with the catering company's name stitched in red over the chest, the kind that's been tied on 100 strangers and washed gray at the seams. He put it in my hands the way you hand a coat to a valet. And behind him, through the open door, 80 faces had started to turn, the way a room turns when it senses something at the threshold. I held the apron and I did not understand it. My mind, which had spent the whole drive rehearsing what I'd say to Nadia, could not get the apron to mean what it meant. I thought, absurdly, that he wanted help with a mix-up in the kitchen, that I was being asked in his clumsy way to pitch in. A father reaches for the kindest reading the way a hand reaches for a rail, so I started to tie it on.
Dad, the caterers go through the side door.
He said it loud. That was the thing. He didn't lean in and murmur it the way you'd spare a man. He pitched it for the room. He wanted the room to hear it land. And then he said the rest, looking not at me but at the faces over my shoulder, performing for them, his voice carrying clean across the front of that gold and happy hall.
You're not on the guest list. You never really were one of us, so go around. Use the side door with the rest of the staff and let these people enjoy their night.
And from just inside the door, where 2 women had paused with their wine, one of them said the thing that finished the demotion. Not cruelly, just amused, pitched for her friend and not for me, and Marcus close enough to hear every word.
Oh, that's sweet. They let the old fellow help out. Somebody should tell him his collar's crooked.
Her friend laughed, a small, bright laugh, and that was that. My son heard a stranger call his father the old fellow who helps out, 6 feet from where I stood, and his mouth did not move to correct it. He let it stand and waited for me to absorb it, so the night could move on. Marcus, I said, just his name. Low, level, the voice you use to give a man one last chance to be the son you raised.
Don't make this a thing, Dad. Please. Not tonight. Not in front of everybody. You'll only embarrass yourself, and you'll embarrass her. Just go around the side. I'll send a plate out. It's a kindness. What I'm doing, I'm giving you somewhere to be.
This was the bottom of it, so I'll give it full light. 80 people heard my son tell me I was not one of them. 80 people heard him point his own father at a side door, and the room did what rooms do. It went quiet for a beat, that held breath quiet where a crowd is deciding whether it just saw a scene or a fact. And then, having looked at the tall, confident host and the still old man in the cheap apron, it turned away, in ones and twos. A woman found her wine very interesting. 2 men resumed a conversation that had stopped. The roar came back up, a little forced, the sound a room makes when it's agreed not to have seen something. And in about 4 seconds I was unwritten. I'd walked up those steps, the father who paid for the night. I stood at the bottom of them, the help. If your own son put an apron in your hands in front of 80 people and pointed you at the side door, would you have set the tray down and stayed? Or walked back to your car and let the night belong to him? I'll tell you what I did. I won't pretend it was the only right answer. I've gone back and forth on it more times than I can count. But before I went around the side, Marcus did one more thing, and I want you to hear it, because it told me more about the night than the apron had. A man had come up behind him on the step, a heavy man in a gold watch with a drink already in his hand. A business friend by the look of him, the kind Marcus needed on his side this year. And Marcus turned to him, easy and bright, and put a hand on my shoulder. A warm hand now, a host's hand, for the watching man's benefit.
Randall, glad you came. This is the gentleman handling the catering tonight. He's been a real lifesaver. Dad, this is Randall. He's going to change my whole next quarter.
He called me the gentleman handling the catering, to my face, with his hand warm on my shoulder. And the heavy man looked at me the way you look at a man you've just been told is staff, a glance that lands and slides off, and lifted his glass an inch.
Good spread. Tell your people the lamb's excellent, and whoever's pouring the red, slow down on the cheap stuff, would you?
And then he did the thing I keep coming back to, the small thing, the one that did more than the apron. He reached into his pocket without looking at me, the way you do for a coat check man, and he pinched a folded bill and pushed it at the breast of my jacket, at the pocket where my card to Nadia sat over my heart.
Here, for the trouble. Buy yourself something on the way home, Pop.
Pop. He called me Pop and pressed a 10 against the card that said, "I'm proud of you," and waited for me to take it. My son was standing right there, close enough to stop it with one word. "That's my father, Randall. Put your money away." And he did not say it. He watched the bill come at my chest and let it come, and the only thing that moved on his face was the small relief of a man whose lie is holding. I did not take the money. I let it hang in the air until the holding got awkward, and Randall, not unkind, just sure, tucked it into the apron pocket instead, the front one, where tips go, and patted it once.
There. Don't say I never did anything for the help.
"I'll pass it along," I said. "The man who picked the wine has high standards. You'd like him."
Yeah? Who's that?
"He's around." Marcus laughed too quickly and steered Randall toward the bar, the apron pocket on me holding a stranger's 10, and I filed away the small fact that my son had not caught the thing I'd said, that I'd just told a stranger I paid for his wine and Marcus had heard nothing in it but an old man rambling. The story he'd sold the room about me had a use I hadn't expected. It let me say true things out loud and have them land as noise, and it told me the introduction had not been careless. He'd built me into staff in front of the one man whose good opinion he was chasing, because a father he could point at as the help was worth more to him that night than a father. I didn't know yet why. I only knew, watching that gold watch turn away, that I'd been spent, like the money in the envelope.
Side door, Dad. The lamb's not going to walk itself out.
"No," I said, "it won't." And I turned and went around the side, and behind me I heard my son laugh at something Randall said, the loose, easy laugh of a man whose night is going exactly the way he built it. I looked for Nadia. Of course I looked for Nadia. A father whose son has just unmade him in public looks for his other child the way a falling man looks for a hand. And I found her. She was near the head table in her cap and gown, the silver banner with her name shining behind her, and she'd heard it. I could see she'd heard it because the cap was tilted down and her chin was down, and she was looking at her plate as if her plate had asked her a hard question. She did not look up. She did not cross the floor. She did not say, "That's my dad, what are you doing?" My daughter, on the proudest night of her life, in the room I'd emptied an envelope to fill, looked at her plate and said nothing, and let her father be turned into the help in front of everyone she knew. I don't blame her the way you might think, and I'll explain that later, because the not blaming is its own piece of this. For now, I'll only say her silence cut deeper than his words, the way a wound that surprises you always does. Marcus. I could half explain even then. Marcus performed, there was a logic of vanity to it I could trace. Nadia's silence had no logic I could reach. It sat in my chest like a swallowed stone, and it sits there a little to this day. So there it is, the wound, laid plain. A man who'd quietly paid for two children's whole upbringings, never once said out loud, handed a stranger's apron by his older son, called "not one of us" in front of 80 guests, pointed at a side door while his younger daughter studied her plate. That's the floor of this story. Everything from here climbs. I tied the apron the rest of the way on and went around to the side, and I'll be honest about why, because the easy version makes me a martyr and I have no interest in being one. If I'd raised my voice and said the true thing, that I paid for this room, that my name's on no list because my son took every line that should have had mine, the room would not have heard a wronged father. It had been prepared. There was no third door, so I took the one that kept the night Nadia's. The side door led into the service hall behind the kitchen, warm and bright and loud with the real work of a party, and there a young man in a matching apron, a caterer, a real one, looked at me with the careful blankness of someone who'd just watched a thing he'd rather not have watched.
"You with us tonight?"
"Seems I am," I said.
"Okay." He looked at me a second longer than the question needed, and whatever he saw, he decided to be kind about it. He handed me a tray off the pass, a light one, mushrooms under a heat lamp, the easiest thing on the line to carry. "Take this one. Floor's that way. You don't have to say anything to anybody. Just hold it level and keep moving, and you'll be invisible by the third table."
"I know the trick," I said.
"Figured you might."
I took the tray, and for the second time in my life, a person had tied an apron's worth of a roll onto me, and the two could not have meant it more differently. The first had been my wife, Mira. 9 years gone now, and not a day of the 9 I haven't reached for her in some small, empty way. She used to tie an apron on me on Sunday mornings, reaching around from behind, knotting the strings at the small of my back, and she had a thing she said while she did it, every time. A private joke that was also, the way the best jokes are, completely true.
There he is, the man who feeds everyone and eats last.
"Somebody's got to take the burnt piece," I'd say back every time, our little call and answer.
And it's always you. Don't think I don't see it, David. I see all of it.
She meant it as praise. She meant it as the whole shape of who I was, the one who carries, the one who pays and doesn't mention it. She tied the apron on me as a crown. My son had just tied the same kind of apron on me as a brand. Same cloth, same body, same strings at the back. One of them called it the best of me, one called it the least, and only one of them was in the room to say it out loud. I carried the tray out onto the floor. I offered mushrooms to people who would not meet my eyes, and some took one to be polite, and some waved me off the way you wave off staff, and I moved through the warm gold room I had paid for like a piece of its furniture, and held my face still. Because in the 4 seconds of being unwritten, I'd noticed something the room had not. There was a woman by the front door. She sat alone at the small table nearest the glass, the table nobody chooses, the one that catches the draft every time the doors open, and she'd been there, I realized, since before I arrived. She must have come early. And not one of the 80 people had gone to her. No one had brought her a drink. No one had said, "Are you with the bride's side or the groom's?" The small, dumb sorting thing people say at a party to a face they don't know. She'd been left exactly the way I'd just been left. Outside the circle the room had drawn for itself. She was younger than my children, somewhere near 30, in a dark suit, plainer and finer than anything else in that room, and she had a leather folder closed flat on the table in front of her, and her hands folded on top of it, and she was watching the floor the way you watch a thing you've come a long way to see. She was watching me. Not with pity. I'd have known pity. I'd just had a room full of it and could have picked it out blind. She was watching me the way you watch a man you already know to see how he's holding up. And when my eyes found hers across that gold and indifferent room, me in the apron with the tray, her at the cold table by the door, my breath did the thing breath does when the body knows a face before the mind gives it leave to. I had held that face when it was small enough to fit in 2 hands. I had watched it learn to read at my own kitchen table. The room saw a stranger nobody had greeted. I saw a girl my dead wife had asked me to keep, and kept. She did not smile. She did not wave. She gave me the smallest movement of her chin, a 1/4 inch. "Hello, I'm here. I see it." and I felt the swallowed stone in my chest shift just slightly, the way a thing shifts when it learns it isn't the only weight in the room. Her name is Adaiz, and she is the third name in this story I haven't earned the right to explain to you yet, so I'll only tell you the part my heart already knew on that floor. 9 years ago, I made a promise to my wife about a girl who was not ours by blood and became ours by something stronger. And I have kept that promise every single day since, in silence, the way Mira made me swear to keep it. The woman at the cold table was that girl, grown. I'd put her on no guest list. Marcus would have made sure of that, though I didn't yet know why a man would bother. And she had not come for the cake or the toast or the silver banner. She had crossed 1,100 miles of this country and sat down at the worst table in the hall and waited, all evening, for one thing, for me to look at her. And the moment I held the tray and looked, the only thing she needed from the whole night had been delivered. And everything that was coming, everything that would take that gold room apart, started ticking from the quarter-inch of a stranger's nod. I will tell you this now and let it sit, because it is the only promise I'll make you out loud before the end. There was a single moment that whole evening that everything hinged on, and it was not a speech, and it was not a paper. It was the second I would decide to give that quiet woman the nod. She was waiting on it the way a held breath waits to be let go. Until I gave it, nothing would happen. The moment I gave it, nothing in that gold room would stay where my son had put it. Hold that. We're walking toward it the whole rest of the night. I did not go to her. Every part of me wanted to set the tray down and cross the floor and say her name where the room could hear it. But the room was not ready. So I kept the apron on and the tray moving, and I walked the floor of my son's borrowed hall until I came around the end of the warming line, and there, with her cap in her hand and her gown unzipped at the throat, was Nadia. She'd been crying a little and hiding it well. She looked at me in the apron, with the tray, and her face did a thing I'll carry the rest of my life. It crumpled, just for a second, the way a child's face crumples. And then she put it back together because she's mine, and she's proud, and she didn't want me to see. Her hand was on the edge of the warming line, and I watched it. The hand, not the face. Because the face she could school, and the hand she couldn't. It was trembling. Just at the fingertips. The same tremble her mother's hands got when Mira was holding two truths at once, and couldn't yet say which one she'd keep. My daughter looked from my face to the apron to the floor and back, and she could not make her eyes stay on any of them. And I knew right then that whatever Marcus had poured into her had not set all the way, because a thing that's set doesn't shake.
Dad, please, you don't have to do this. Just go home. I'll come by tomorrow. I promise we'll talk. Just don't stand out here like this, please.
I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm having a slow night at a party. Is the cake good?
Don't joke, Marcus says. She stopped. She'd been handed a word. The same way the whole room had been handed one about me, and she didn't want to use it on my face.
Say it.
He says you've been confused. About money. About papers. He says we have to be careful what you sign now, that you forget things, that you'll agree to anything if somebody asks nice.
And you believe him?
I don't know what I believe. He's been telling me for weeks, Dad. Little things. He'll call and say, "Did Dad seem okay to you? Did he repeat himself? Did he sign anything in front of you?" And then tonight he said, if you got upset, it'd be because you don't always know where you are anymore. And that the kindest thing was to keep you on the edges, where it's quiet, so you wouldn't get overwhelmed and make a scene at my party.
He set the table before I ever walked in, I said. He told you I'd be confused, and then he made sure I looked it. He handed me an apron in front of 80 people. A confused man takes the apron and shuffles off. A clear one makes a scene and proves the apron right. Either way, his story holds. Do you see the trap of it?
Stop. Please stop talking like this. You're making it sound like Like he planned it. He's your son. He wouldn't.
Wouldn't what?
He's been so worried about you. He cried, Dad. On the phone 2 weeks ago, he cried about you.
I let that sit a second. My son had cried to his sister about my failing mind. 2 weeks before he stood me in an apron at the front door. I am a slow man to anger, but something cold and clear came up in me at that, and it has not fully gone back down since. I'm sure he did, I said. He cried to you about my mind on the phone, and tonight he put me in a caterer's apron and pointed me at the side door in front of the people he wants to impress. Those two things happened. Hold them next to each other and tell me which one is the real one.
That's not fair.
Probably not. I'm an old man in an apron. Fairness left a while ago. I looked at my daughter, who'd been told for weeks that her father was coming apart, and I understood that the story Marcus had poured into her was the same one he'd poured into the room, just sweeter, dressed as worry instead of contempt. She wasn't ashamed of me. She was scared for me, on a fear he'd built himself and handed her like a tray. Nadia, I said, do I seem confused to you right now?
No.
Do I know where I am?
Yes.
Then hold on to that. Whatever happens tonight, whatever you've been told, hold on to the fact that your father walked in here knowing exactly where he was and exactly who he was, and chose to carry a tray rather than ruin your night. Can you do that for me? Just that. Just hold on to the one true thing.
Dad, you're scaring me. Why are you talking like something's going to happen?
She'd reached out and taken hold of my sleeve without seeming to know she'd done it, the way she used to grab my hand crossing a street, and her grip was not steady.
Just tell me you'll go home if it gets bad. Promise me. If it gets bad, you'll just leave, and we'll fix it tomorrow, the two of us, away from all these people.
I'll be here when it gets bad, I said. That's the one thing I won't promise to leave. And there it was. The question I had no clean answer to, because something was going to happen. I could feel it ticking in the room behind me at the cold table by the door, and I did not yet know its shape. I only knew it had flown 1,100 miles and was waiting on my word. Do one thing for me tonight, I said. Just one.
What?
There's a woman sitting alone by the front door. Dark suit. Nobody's spoken to her all night. If you get a free minute, go tell her congratulations are running a little behind and that her seat will be the best one in the room before the night's out.
Who is she? Dad, who is that? Why do you even know her?
Better than anyone in this building knows anyone.
That's not an answer.
Your mother knew her before you were old enough to remember. That's the answer. And it's all the answer you get tonight. There's a promise sitting in that chair, Nadia. I made it a long time ago to your mother, and I have kept it every day since. And not one of you ever knew. You will before the night's done. For...
A promise about what? You're doing the thing again? The thing Marcus said you'd. She stopped herself this time, because she heard it. The word she'd almost used on me again. And to her credit, it shamed her a little. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Just remember I asked. Whatever you think of me by midnight, remember your father pointed you at that woman before anything happened, and not after. That's all. Now go enjoy your night. Go let people tell you you're wonderful, because you are, and because it's the only one of these you'll ever get. I'll be fine. I'm always fine. I'm the man who feeds everyone and eats last, remember? She didn't remember. That was her mother's line, and her mother was 9 years gone, and Nadia had been too small to keep it. She just looked at me, frightened and graduated and lovely, and then someone called her name from the floor, and the night pulled her back toward the lights, and she went, looking over her shoulder once, the way you look back at a man on a platform when your train is already moving. Then someone tapped a glass at the head table, and the room hushed, and the band cut off mid-phrase, and my son stood up to give the toast at the party I had paid for.
Everybody, if I could just, thank you all for coming. You know, a night like this doesn't put itself together. There's a lot that goes into giving the people you love the night they deserve, and I just want to say, to my baby sister, the first of us Ellisons to do this, Nadia, I am so proud of you, and I am so glad I could be the one to make tonight happen for you.
I could be the one to make tonight happen for you. He said it into a microphone to 80 people with my money, while I stood by the kitchen doors holding a tray of his guests' empty glasses. And the room lifted its drinks to him and said his name warmly, and somewhere in the warm wall of it a woman near me, not unkind, just sure of where I stood, held her empty glass out toward me without looking.
Could you take this, please? And maybe bring the white, if there's more open.
Of course, I said. I took her glass and went and got the white and poured it, and she said thank you the way you thank furniture that has done its small job. That was the truest picture of the whole night. My son's voice ringing off the ceiling taking credit for my gift, and me filling a stranger's glass in the same breath. The man who feeds everyone and eats last, in a room that had agreed he was no one. I stood a moment after that with the tray going cold in my hands, and I let myself look, really look, through the kitchen doors at the quiet woman by the front. And I let myself remember the promise that had put her in that chair, 1,100 miles from where her life now ran. Because she had not flown across this country for a graduation, I knew that much already. A woman doesn't take the worst seat in the room and watch one man all night for cake. She'd come for an older reason, a buried one, a thing that started at my kitchen table 16 years ago with a different woman's hands and a sentence my wife made me swear to keep. And as my son sat back down to applause he had not paid for, the first cold edge of understanding turned over in me. That the most dangerous person in that hall was the one nobody had bothered to greet, and that I was the only man alive who knew her name, and that the moment I chose to say it, this gold and indifferent room was going to learn what it had turned its back on. The strange thing about being handed a costume in front of a room is how quickly the body decides to wear it. My hands, which have tied 1,000 knots in 60 years, tied that one without asking me, and by the time my mind caught up to argue, the argument was lost. I was a man in an apron standing where a man in an apron stands, and a room does not relitigate a thing it has watched settle. So I picked up the tray. People misread that as a man giving up. Sometimes it's only a man who did the arithmetic faster than the people watching him. Set the tray down and walk out, and I'd have made the scene my son needed, the proof of the story he'd poured into this room for weeks. Stand quiet with a tray of cold mushrooms and I'd refuse it. So I refused it, and made myself invisible for the next 2 hours because invisible men hear everything. The carrying is what let me stay in the room, and staying in the room is the whole of what happened next. The apron was not new to me. That was the part nobody in that hall could have known. The last hands to knot an apron at the small of my back had been my wife's. 9 years gone, the morning of Nadia's 8th birthday. We'd made pancakes for a kitchen full of small girls in party dresses, and Mira had reached around me to tie the strings the way she always did, and leaned her chin on my shoulder.
There he is. The man who feeds everyone and eats last.
Somebody's got to eat last, I said. Might as well be the one who can reach the syrup.
No. Listen to me. That's not a complaint, David. It's the nicest thing I know how to say about a person. Don't ever let anybody turn it into a smaller thing than it is.
I didn't understand the warning. There was no reason to that morning, with the syrup and the small girls and my wife alive at my shoulder. 9 years later, my son made me tie the same costume on the same body and meant it as exactly who I wasn't. The same apron. 2 people deciding what it said about me, and only one of them alive to say it, and she wasn't in the room. So the room believed the wrong one. That's how a thing gets decided about a man, not by argument, by which witness happens to be standing there. I carried water. That became my work for the evening, self-assigned. The catering crew had 4 people for 80 guests, and they were drowning. So I took the water pitcher off the service stand, and I walked the tables filling glasses, because a man with a job to do is a man nobody looks at twice, and I wanted very much to not be looked at twice. I filled glasses for people who had clapped when my son raised his toast. And at the 3rd table, a woman in a green dress held up her glass without looking at my face, the way you hold a cup out to a machine.
Just a little, thank you. Then, to the man beside her, not quite low enough, is that really his father? The one by the kitchen?
That's him. Marcus says he's got problems now. Money trouble, mostly. Mind going a little, I hear. Sad thing.
And Marcus puts him in an apron. At his own daughter's party?
What's he going to do? Sit him at the head table and let him say something to 100 people. Marcus told me he had to take the checkbook off the old man last spring. Manages all of it himself now. You watch a thing like that with your own father, you'd want him where you can see him too.
I filled her glass to the line, and I filled his, and neither of them looked up at the face above the pitcher, because the face above a pitcher is not a face anyone keeps. I said the thing the help says. There you are. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Could we get more bread when you have a moment?
Right away, I said, and I fetched the bread for the table that was discussing whether my mind was going, and they thanked the apron and not me, and I moved on. I learned more about what my son had told this city in those 2 hours than I'd have learned in a month of asking. He'd taken my checkbook off me last spring, apparently. I'd never owned a checkbook he could take. Mira ran the checkbook, and after her I paid everything from one account at one branch. Yet there it was, a thing this room knew about me that had never happened, repeated table to table until it was simply true. A man hears his own funeral sometimes while he's still standing. I heard mine over a water pitcher. The kind ones were sorry for me. The rest were embarrassed for me, and not one of them was wrong on purpose. They'd simply been handed a witness. Marcus, the steady one, the one who paid for all this. And they'd believed the witness, the way I'd believed him at my own kitchen table a month before, the way you believe a son who points at a line and says, "Sign here." It was while I was filling the third or fourth table that I let myself really look, at the woman by the front door. I'd seen her when I came in. Everyone had seen her, and then unseen her, the way a room does with a guest who arrives without a host. She sat alone near the entrance, a little apart from the nearest table, in a plain dark suit among a room of party clothes. No place set for her, no one crossed to greet her, and a woman with no place and no greeting is the one shape a crowded room can't file away. Their eyes would travel her way and slide off. She had a slim folder flat on her knees and no drink in her hand, and a stillness I'd watched grow year by year in a girl at my own kitchen table a long time ago. I knew her. Of course I knew her. I'd known the second I walked in, and my breath did the thing breath does when the body recognizes someone before the mind gives permission. But knowing her in the doorway and letting myself look at her across a floor where my son had just called me. The help were 2 different acts, and the second cost more because it meant admitting she had come, crossed the country, on this night, to watch this, and that whatever brought her was not small. Her name is Adaiz. I'd last held her hand when it was small enough to vanish inside mine, the year she came to us, and now she was 29 and sitting 1,100 miles from wherever her real life was, in a folding chair nobody had bothered to greet, and her eyes found mine across the room over the rim of the water pitcher. And she did not smile, and she did not wave, and she did not look away. She just held my eyes a moment. Level, the way you hold the eyes of a person you have come a very long way to stand near. Then she looked down at the folder on her knees, and back up, and waited. I had to keep moving. A man who stares at a stranger by the door draws the room's eye to that stranger, and something older than thought knew she was the one thing in this building that should not yet be looked at. So I filled the next glass, and the next, and I let the seeing of her happen in pieces, the way you look at the sun by looking at everything around it. Let me tell you who she is, because the room didn't know, and my son didn't know what it meant, and even I, that night, only knew the half of it I'd lived. 16 years ago, my wife had a friend named Grace. They'd grown up 2 streets apart and stayed close the way 2 women stay close who decided early that the other one is family the law just forgot to file. Grace had a daughter, a Days, and Grace got sick the year that daughter turned 13, the kind of sick that does not turn back. In the last weeks of it, my wife sat at Grace's bedside and made a promise. I wasn't in the room. Mira told me about it that night in our kitchen, standing at the counter with her back to me so I wouldn't see her face.
The girl comes to us, David. When Grace is gone, we raise her like our own.
All right, I said. I didn't have to think about it. There are decisions a marriage makes for you before you arrive at them. But she turned around then, and she put a condition on it that I have spent 16 years keeping.
There's a rule. We don't tell her it's charity. We don't keep a ledger she has to feel. She is not a kindness we did. She's a daughter we have. You pay what needs paying, and you never, ever let her thank you for it. Promise me you'll carry it quiet, all the way, even after I'm not here to make you.
Even after you're not here, I said, which was a sentence neither of us thought we'd need so soon.
Especially then.
I promised her that at the kitchen counter with Grace still alive 2 miles away, and 4 months later Grace was gone and a Days was 13 and ours, and I kept the promise. The rule of the promise was that I'd never say it at all, and here I am saying it, so I'll say only the shape. There was a fund with Mira's name on the front and no story attached, and for 16 years it covered what needed covering: the school, the better school, the 4 years of college, the 3 years of law school after. And a Days grew up believing some fund somewhere believed in her, which was the whole architecture of it, because a girl who thinks a fund believes in her grows up straight, and a girl who thinks she's a debt grows up bent. Mira was gone before the second tuition bill came. I paid everyone after her in her name, and told no one, not Marcus, not Nadia, especially not a Daisy. I paid for 3 children's schooling and told none of them. Would you have kept it quiet that long, or would you have made sure at least once that they knew? I used to think the quiet was the gift. I'm less sure now. The quiet is also what let my sons stand up tonight and say I was never one of them. Because a man who spends 16 years making sure nobody can tally what he gave has also made sure nobody can defend him by counting it. I just hadn't been handed that bill yet. Here is the one thing the promise let me keep visible, the one crack of light I'd allowed in 16 years of carrying it quiet. The day a Days graduated law school, the only one of these milestones I flew to, because by then Mira was 4 years gone, and somebody from the family had to be in those bleachers. I gave her a ring, my wife's wedding ring, the thin gold band Mira had worn for 31 years and that I'd kept in a drawer since the morning the hospital handed me back her things in a paper envelope. I didn't make a speech about it. I am not a man who makes speeches. You'll have gathered that. I just took a Dais's hand outside the auditorium with the gowns going by, and I put the ring in her palm and closed her fingers over it. She'd have wanted you to have something of hers, I said. That was the only true sentence I let myself say in 16 years. Adais looked at the ring, and then at me, and she is quicker than I am and always has been.
This is hers, Mira's wedding ring.
It is.
You don't give a girl a dead woman's wedding ring for being someone's friend's kid, David. You give it for something else. She turned it over once in her palm. It was the fund, wasn't it? The whole time. There was never any fund. There was just you.
There was a fund, I said. It had her name on the front.
Her name on the front. And whose money behind it?
Yours, I said. It was always meant to be yours.
That's not what I asked, and you know it isn't. 16 years. Every bill. The good high school, the dorm, 3 years of this. She lifted the diploma tube in her other hand, and you let me write thank you notes to an account number.
Those were the rules, I said. I didn't make them. I just kept them.
Whose rules?
Hers. She made me promise. Don't tell her it's charity. Don't keep a ledger she has to feel. I gave my word at a kitchen counter the year you came to us, and I'd give it again. She was quiet a moment, holding the ring, and when she spoke, she didn't fight me on it, because she'd already understood she couldn't win against a promise made to a dead woman and that she didn't want to.
Okay, she said. Then I won't make you say it. I'll just wear something of hers, and we'll both know what it means, and neither of us will say it out loud. That's the deal you're offering, isn't it?
That's the deal, I said.
Fine. She put the ring on. She held her hand up to the afternoon light with the gowns going by behind her. But you should know I'm a lawyer now, David. I read the documents people hope nobody reads. So I'm telling you, one day a piece of paper is going to need me to know exactly who you've been to me. And on that day, I'm not going to thank an account number.
I thought it was a kind thing to say, a graduate being grateful. I did not hear it for the promise it was, standing outside that auditorium, 4 years before a man in an apron would hand me a tray. That was the most either of us ever said about any of it, until tonight. That ring was in the breast pocket of my one good jacket as I stood in my son's banquet hall carrying a water pitcher. I'd carried it against my chest because I'd known a daze was coming. She'd written me a week before, one line. I'll be there Saturday. There's something you need to be in the room for. I hadn't understood it. I'd assumed she meant Nadia's graduation, that she was being kind, that she'd fly out for her foster sister's party the way family does. And I'd taken the ring out of the drawer because some sentimental part of me wanted Mira's ring in the building on a night her youngest child crossed a stage. That's all I thought it was. A father bringing a dead mother's ring to a graduation. I did not know, filling water glasses in an apron, that the ring in my pocket was about to become the only object in that hall that could prove who the quiet woman by the door was to me, and that proving it was going to matter more than anything I'd ever carried. But I'm getting ahead. I didn't know any of that yet. What I knew, standing there, was that a daze had flown a very long way to sit in a chair nobody greeted, with a folder on her knees, on a night my son had decided to walk me to the kitchen doors, and that those two facts were sitting in the same room and refusing to be a coincidence. It was while I was setting the pitcher back on the stand that Nadia found me. My youngest, the reason for the party, 18 that spring, the cap in her hand and the gown unzipped at the throat. She'd been crying a little earlier and hiding it well, and she came around the end of the warming line where the room couldn't see her talk to the help.
Dad, please, you don't have to do this. Just go home. I'll come by tomorrow, I promise, the whole day.
I know I don't have to, I said. I'm not doing anything, sweetheart. I'm having a slow night at a party. The water needed pouring.
It doesn't need pouring. There's staff, Marcus says. She stopped. There was a word in her mouth she didn't want to put on my face.
Say it.
He says you've been confused. About money? About papers? He says we have to be careful what you sign now, that you took it wrong last spring with the checkbook, that you get turned around. He says tonight's a lot of people and a lot of noise, and it's not good for you.
What checkbook? I said.
He said. She frowned. She was hearing it for the first time as a thing that might not fit. He said he took the checkbook. Last spring.
Do I seem turned around to you tonight, Nadia? Right now, here talking to you?
No, you don't.
Then hold on to that one thing, however the night goes. You weren't confused about what you saw. Can you do that for me?
Dad, you're scaring me a little.
I don't mean to. I mean the opposite of that. Go back to your friends. It's your night. Let it be your night a while longer. I didn't explain, because the explanation was a folded paper in my pocket and a ring against my chest, and none of it was mine to open yet. She drifted back toward the music, and I thought, there is the one person in this room my son cannot afford to have start counting. She'd just heard 2 numbers that didn't add, a checkbook that never existed, a confusion she couldn't see, and she'd heard them land wrong. She didn't know the real sum, but she'd started to add. And then there was the paper. The paper had been riding in my wallet the whole night, folded into eighths, and I'd half forgotten it until I reached for a napkin to wipe the pitcher and my fingers found the fold. A month before the party, Marcus had come to my house on a Tuesday evening. He came more those days, and I'd thought it was kindness, Thought my son had finally turned the corner men turn in their 30s when they look at their aging father and decide to show up. He'd sit at my kitchen table, Mira's table, the one she'd poured tea at, and that particular Tuesday he'd brought a folder of his own and slid it across to me.
Just some paperwork, Dad. Insurance stuff. With the market the way it is, I want the house protected. Your name, the equity, all of it locked down so nobody can come after it if the economy turns.
Protected from what? I said. Nobody's coming after the house. It's paid off. There's nothing on it.
That's exactly why. A free and clear house is a target, Dad. No mortgage means no bank watching it. You'd be amazed what people try to attach to a clean title. This just puts a wrapper around it. Belt and suspenders.
Your mother never bought insurance she hadn't read out loud first.
Mom's not here, Dad. He said it gently. He said almost everything gently that month. And I am. I do this every day. You think I'd let anything touch this house? It's the one thing she left us. I'm trying to put a wall around it before somebody else does.
Then read it to me, the way she would have. We've got all night.
I'm not going to sit my own father down and walk him through 40 pages of boilerplate at 9 o'clock at night like he's a child. That's not respect. That's the opposite of it. You trust me or you don't. Which is it?
Where do you sign? I said. If it's the house, you've got no part of it to sign.
There's an owner box and a witness box. You're the owner, I'm the witness. That's all I am on this, Dad. A witness. He kept his thumb on the line, covering the lines above it. Right here and here in the back. It's all standard.
What's under your thumb? I said. You keep covering the same spot.
Nothing's under my thumb, Dad. It's a margin. It's where they print the form number. He didn't move the thumb. You're doing the thing again. Looking for a problem and a kindness. Sign the bottom and let me protect the one thing Mom left us, or don't, and we'll see who's standing in front of this house when the market turns.
And I signed. It sits in me like a swallowed stone, and the honest thing is that I never read it, and I never made him lift the thumb. I signed where my son pointed because he was my son, and he was at his mother's table, and he'd said the word insurance, and a father signs for a son the way he breathes. After 3 weeks of calling myself a fool, I've decided that isn't foolishness. It's the most ordinary trust in the world, the trust that makes a family a family. And my son had looked at it and seen a tool. I'd have never thought twice about it. The signing would have vanished into the 1,000 small papers a man signs in a long life, except for a habit my wife drilled into me across 31 years, and that outlived her by 9. Mira never let a statement go unread. Every month, the bank statement on the house at the kitchen table, glasses on, line by line, because her own father had lost a farm to a paper nobody in the family read until it was too late. She read them after we'd paid the house off and there was nothing left to read but a 0. The week before she died, she made me sit at the foot of her bed with the statement in my hands.
Read it to me, the house one. Out loud, the whole thing.
There's nothing on it, Mira. It's all zeros. You know that better than I do.
I know it's zeros. Read me the zeros. I want to hear them in your voice.
So I read her the zeros, line by line, the way she'd taught me, and when I finished, she took my hand off the page and held it.
Now promise me, you keep reading them every month, after me. Nobody in this family ever loses a thing to a paper they didn't read. Not after everything we paid for it.
I promise, I said.
Say it like you mean to keep it. You're the only one left who reads them.
I'll read every line, every month, as long as I've got eyes. I keep my promises. It's the one talent I'll claim, and it is the reason I was standing at a teller window a week after I signed my son's insurance papers, reading a line he'd counted on no one ever reading. Out of nothing but Mira's old habit, I pulled the current statement on the house account and read it line by line at the little counter by the window the way she'd taught me. And one line did not match. I couldn't read it. I'm a man who reads his statements, not one who knows what every line means. But 31 years beside Mira had taught my eye to know a wrong line the way your foot knows a stair that isn't there. The house had been described one way for 22 years, the plain way, the owned way. This line described it as something else, a status, a category. Words that belong to a house somebody owed on. A house somebody could be put out of. I carried the page to the young man at the desk and laid it flat in front of him, and I turned it so the line faced him, and I put one finger on it and left it there. Tell me what that says, not what it means. Just read me the words on that line.
That's the property status field, sir. The account's in good standing, if that's the worry. Is there a charge you're disputing?
Not a charge. That line. The way it lists my house. It has never once read like that in 22 years, and I'd like you to say out loud what it reads like now. He looked at the screen, and then back at the page under my finger, and something in him cooled. He was young, but he wasn't slow, and he'd seen the thing on his own monitor that he didn't want to be the one to say to a gray-haired man across a counter.
That field populates from the loan side, from an application or a lien attached to the property. It doesn't come from us at the branch.
There is no loan on my house. It was paid off 9 years ago. There is nothing to attach to it.
Sir. He stopped. He glanced once toward the closed door of an office behind him, the way a person glances toward the place a question like mine is supposed to go, and then he decided not to walk it there, and the deciding was its own answer. If there's a recent application against the property, this is what the field would do. I'd ask whoever helped you with the paperwork lately. Sometimes, a family member sets something up and the account just reflects it. Is there someone who handles your finances with you?
There it was again, in a stranger's mouth at a teller window. The gentle assumption that some younger, steadier hand was handling me. I handle them myself, I said. Print me that page. He printed it. His hand was not quite steady passing it across, and I noticed that, the way you notice a thing and file it without a name, a young man at a bank had read one line about my house and gone careful with me, and I did not yet know why a single line could make a stranger lower his voice. I folded the page into eighths and put it in my wallet, and I told myself I'd ask Marcus, and then I thought of the word insurance and his thumb on the line, and some animal part of me, older than trust, said don't ask the man who pointed. So I didn't. I carried the copy for 3 weeks and called it a worry instead of a crime, because it is a hard thing to believe of a son, and a father will lend his son the gentle word long past the point the gentle word has earned. The copy was in my back pocket now, under the apron, while a Daisy sat by the door with a folder of her own on her knees. And standing there with the pitcher going light in my hand, I let myself do the thing I'd refused to do for 3 weeks. I let the two facts touch. A woman who runs the law for a living, flown 1,100 miles, sitting on a folder, on the night my son walked me to the kitchen, and a line on my own house's statement that read as if somebody might be put out of a house I'd paid off. I had no word connecting them. I had only the cold, climbing certainty that they were two ends of the same rope, and that my son had handed me an apron tonight, not in spite of that statement, but because of it. I set the pitcher down on the service stand. My hands had started to want stillness more than work. And then a thing happened I hadn't planned. A Daze got up from her chair. Not toward Marcus. Toward the service hall, slow, a folder under her arm. The way a person crosses a room she wants no one to notice her cross. She passed close to me at the kitchen doors, close enough to speak without turning her head, and she spoke without turning her head.
You found a line on a statement that didn't match 3 weeks ago. You pulled a copy and you've been carrying it folded up ever since, and you haven't shown it to a soul.
It was not a question, and I did not ask how she knew, because the way she said it told me she knew far more than the line. I have, I said. It's in my pocket right now.
Leave it there. Don't take it out. Don't ask him about it tonight. Don't ask anyone. Don't so much as let it crease your face. Keep it where it is and keep yourself exactly where you are.
You know what it is, I said, the line I couldn't read.
I know what it is.
Then tell me. I've been calling it a worry for 3 weeks because I didn't have the word, and I didn't trust myself to guess it. You have the word.
I have the word. I'm not going to hand it to you in a service corridor over a water pitcher where it'll sit in your eyes for an hour and tell my brother everything he needs to know.
Your brother, I said. The word landed strangely between us. She'd never once, in 16 years, called Marcus her brother to my face. You came 1,100 miles about a line on my bank statement.
I came 1,100 miles about you. The line is why it had to be tonight.
Is it as bad as the not knowing's been? That's all I'm asking, yes or no. She stopped, just for a breath, with the swinging door an inch off her shoulder and the dishwashers loud behind it, and she looked at me the way she'd looked at me outside that auditorium with the ring in her hand, quick and seeing all of it, and choosing her one sentence.
It's worse than the not knowing, by a long way. The not knowing's been the kindest version you'll ever get of it. She held the folder a little tighter against her ribs. But you're going to hear it once, clean, in the right room, with the right people forced to listen, not twice, badly, in a hallway. Mira taught me that without ever saying it. So carry the tray a little longer, David. Pour the water, be the help 1 more hour. You've carried heavier things quieter than this, and you've never once put them down early.
Then tell me when, I said. If I'm to carry it, tell me how long. Give me a mark on the night to walk toward.
You'll give me the mark, not the other way around. I'm not going to move a muscle in this room until you tell me to. When you've had enough of the apron, when you decide the room is ready and not 1 second before, you look at me and you give me the smallest thing your face can do. A nod. That's all. I've sat in that chair 4 hours and flown 1,100 miles for one nod from you, and I will sit 4 more if I have to. But nothing opens until it comes. Do you understand me? It runs on your signal. Not mine, not his. Yours.
I did understand her, and I want you to hold it the way I held it, because it changed the shape of the whole rest of the night for me. Every minute I poured water after that was a minute I was choosing. The detonation was already built and wired and sitting in a folder against her ribs, and the only thing it was waiting on was a 1/4 inch of my chin. I carried that knowledge back out onto the floor like a live thing in my pocket, that the loudest moment of my life was set to a clock I held, and the clock would not move until I moved it. Open the folder, I said. Just for me, just here.
No. A thing that's true in this hallway and a thing that's true in front of the 80 people who watched him hand you an apron are 2 different weights, and I did not get on a plane to give you the light one. She put her hand flat on the door. When I open this, you'll be standing where they all have to see it open. Until then, nothing in your face. Promise me. You're good at promising.
I'm good at keeping them, I said. That's the part that costs.
I know, she said. I'm the proof of it.
And she went on through into the steam and the noise with the folder she still had not opened, and left me standing at the kitchen doors with the apron on and the ring against my chest, and one word she wouldn't give me, and one she'd given me by accident, brother, humming in my ears, and not one more sentence to hold any of it with. I wasn't ready. A wrong line I couldn't read, a daughter raised in secret now flown across a country, a folder she wouldn't open, and one sentence, it's worse, to keep me company. A wiser man might have torn the apron off right then. I picked the pitcher back up instead, because the apron was still on me and the job was still mine, and I wanted, for a few minutes more, to stay invisible while I steadied my hands. I didn't get the few minutes, because across the room my son set down his glass, and the host's smile shifted into a different smile, the patient one, the one he put on for me, and he stepped away from the head table, and he started crossing the floor, toward the kitchen doors, toward the apron, toward the man with the water pitcher and the ring in his pocket and the folded statement under his cuff. He came at the unhurried pace of a man who has decided there is nothing left in the room that can hurt him. And as he came, his hand was already lifting, already reaching out in front of him, open, palm up, the way you reach for a thing you intend to take. He was reaching for the tray. And he had no idea, none, that of the 3 things on or near me in that moment, the tray was the only one that didn't matter, and that the half-minute he was about to spend reaching for it was the half-minute the whole rest of my life would turn on. My son had just put his hand out for the tray. I want to start there, because everything that came after turned on the half-minute that followed it. He came across the floor smiling, the host's smile, the one that tells a room the man wearing it has nothing to hide and everything in hand.
Give me that, Dad. You've done enough standing. Let one of the real staff carry it. Go sit in the car. I'll send a plate out.
The tray was nothing. A dozen stuffed mushrooms going cold. But he wasn't reaching for the tray. He'd already taken the night from me. He didn't need the mushrooms. What his eyes did, while his hand was out, was drop for half a second to the breast pocket of my one-good jacket, the jacket I'd worn under the borrowed apron, and I understood that he was counting what I had on me the way a man counts the exits in a room he's about to leave fast. In that pocket, flat against my chest, was a thin band of gold I had not worn in 9 years, and had no right to wear now. It was the only thing in that building that could say, out loud, who the quiet woman by the door was to me. I did not hand him the tray. I set it on the service stand by the kitchen doors myself, the way I'd been told to, and I kept my hand loose at my side. "I'm fine where I am," I said. "I'll see Nadia get her cake."
You're embarrassing her.
"Then she can tell me so."
She won't. She's mortified. Do you have any idea what tonight cost? What it took to get this room, these people, all of it together for her? And you're standing by the kitchen like... He stopped himself, lowered it, leaned in close so only I could hear. "Just take the car keys, Dad. Go home. Let me handle the rest. I've been handling the rest for a while now. You just don't know it yet."
"I think I'm starting to," I said.
Starting to what?
"Know it." He held there a second, reading me, and decided I meant nothing by it. Because a man who has already decided you're confused will hear confusion in a clear sentence and file it as proof. That was the one advantage his story handed me. The version of me he'd sold the room, vague, fading, harmless, was the version that let me say a true thing to his face and watch him store it as nonsense. He didn't like that. A man like Marcus doesn't mind being disobeyed by the help. He minds being disobeyed by a man he just turned into the help in front of 80 people, because it means the turning didn't take all the way. He patted my shoulder. Light, public, a son being patient with a fading father for the benefit of anyone watching. And he went back toward the head table, and the room let out the small breath a room lets out when a scene it expected does not arrive. Being recast late in your own life doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like standing very still while a room agrees, quietly and all at once, to a version of you that you didn't write and can't correct without proving the version right. Make a scene, and you're the unstable old man they were warned about. Stay quiet, and you're the help. So I held the tray and let them be sure of me, the same cheap apron at my chest that my wife had once tied on the same body and called the best of me, while my son wore me into the worst. So I did a quiet thing. The first thing all night that was mine, that nobody had handed me with a tray. I did not plan it. I just knew, the way you know a glass is going to slide before it slides, that the ring could not spend one more hour in a pocket my own son had already learned to look at. I went down the service hall, past the warming line, not fast. I had spent a long time learning that a hurrying man tells a room something, and I was not going to tell this room anything. I went at the pace of a man looking for the restroom, past 2 cooks plating dessert and a girl loading a bus tub, until I reached the little coat alcove by the staff entrance where my jacket would hang at the end of the night with the other forgettable coats. There was a row of lockers there for the catering crew, half of them without doors. I am telling you this because the safest place I found in my son's borrowed hall was a doorless locker meant for a stranger's lunch. I had 2 things to keep out of his reach: the ring and a single folded sheet of paper I had carried in my wallet for 3 weeks without understanding it. The paper was a copy of a bank statement for the house account, the account on the house I'd paid off, the house that sits on the lot behind this very hall. Marcus had handed me a stack one evening at my kitchen table and called it insurance paperwork, and I'd signed where he pointed, the way you sign for a son you trust and a week later I'd pulled my own statement at the branch out of an old habit my wife drilled into me, and a line on it had not matched what Marcus had told me the papers were for. I didn't know what it meant. I only knew it was the one piece of the night that hadn't come from anybody but me, and that a man who would slide his father to the kitchen doors would, given the chance, make a single inconvenient sheet of paper disappear. I did not hide them in the locker. I want to be honest about that, because for a second I almost did, and then I heard my late wife in my ear, the thing she used to say when I'd overthink a simple choice. Keep the important things where your own body is. The ring went back into the breast pocket, against my chest, where only a hand inside my jacket could find it. The statement went flat into my sock, under the cuff, the one place a son does not pat a father down. Then I took my own jacket off the hook and folded it over my arm and carried it back out with me empty, so that if Marcus came looking, he could check the coats and the lockers and the stand by the doors and find nothing but a tray and a tired old man with his coat on his arm. And of course, on the way back, it was Nadia who found me. She came around the end of the warming line with her cap in her hand and her gown unzipped at the throat. 18 years old that spring. The whole evening built around her, and the look on her face, the look of a girl who can't find the seat that was supposed to be hers. She'd been crying a little and hiding it well.
Dad, you don't have to do this. Just go home. I'll come by tomorrow.
I know I don't have to, I said. I'm not doing anything. I'm having a slow night at a party.
Marcus says you've been. She stopped. She'd been handed a word, too, the way the whole room had been handed one about me, and she didn't want to use it on my face.
Say it.
Confused. He says you've been confused. About money, about papers, about... He says we have to be careful what you sign now.
The same word, sweeter this time, dressed as worry instead of contempt. She wasn't ashamed of me. She was scared for me on a fear my son had built and handed her. Do I seem confused to you tonight, Nadia?
No.
Then hold on to that. However the night goes, you weren't confused about what you saw. She didn't understand me, and I didn't explain, because the explanation was a folded paper in my sock and a ring against my chest and a woman by the front door, and none of it was mine to open yet. She drifted back toward her friends with the cap still in her hand, and I watched the back of her gown go, and I thought, there is the one person in this room my son cannot afford to have start doing arithmetic. She'd already started. She just didn't know what the numbers were. If your own child had spent 3 weeks being told you were losing your grip, and then watched you set a tray down steadier than the man telling the story, how long would you keep believing the story? Tell me. I told you the bottom was the apron and the tray and my son's hand on my elbow. I was wrong the way you're wrong about a stare in the dark. Sure, your foot's about to land, and then it keeps going, and I'd find no floor under it for another hour. So I picked the picture up again, which is what I did with the worst news I'd had in 9 years. I refilled water glasses for people who'd watched my son walk me to the side door, and I did it well, because doing it badly would have proved his story for him. That was the minute the whole night actually lived in. Not the speeches, the pouring, the standing a little to the side of your own family's celebration with a cloth over your arm while the people you raised get toasted by the one who's robbing you, and the only thing you let your face do is nothing. They were doing the diploma part of it now. Somebody had a microphone, and there were a few words about Nadia, our Nadia, top of something, bound for somewhere, and the room did the warm murmur a room does, and I stood by the kitchen doors and watched my daughter accept it across 40 feet of floor I was not allowed to cross. I had paid for every page behind that piece of paper. I had worked the second job that bought the tutor, signed the forms, sat in the parking lots, and I watched her hold it up to a room that had been told I was the catering crew, and I did not get to clap from where a father claps. I clapped anyway, once, quietly, with the pitcher still in my hand, and nobody heard it. And that was all right, because it wasn't for them. So I did the job flawlessly. I refilled before the glass was empty. I cleared without being asked. The cruelty was never the apron. The apron's just cloth. The cruelty was that the roll came with a rule, and the rule was that I may not react, because the second I reacted, I'd have made the scene that was the last piece of evidence his story still needed. I made myself so good at being nobody that the being nobody started to feel like the last thing I owned, and I held on to it like a railing. A woman at table 6 lifted her glass at me without turning her head. She was somebody's aunt in good earrings, and she did the thing people do to staff, which is to speak to you while looking at the person across from her, so the asking costs her no part of her evening.
Could we get more of the white down here? And whoever's on the cake, we're 4 short on forks at this end.
I'll see to the forks, I said.
Thank you, and the white.
I poured the white. I found 4 forks. It stung, and not the way you'd think. Not at the order, which was nothing, but at how easy I was to file. She'd looked at the apron and the gray hair and built the whole of me in half a second, and she was not wrong to, because that is what an apron is for. I set the forks down at her end, and she said the white again, a third time, like I'd misplaced it, and I went and got more white, and a man 2 seats over watched me do it and decided I was slow.
He's a little, you know. The man tapped his own temple, friendly, not even cruel, just passing along a thing he'd been told. The host's father, bless him, they keep him busy. Better than sitting him in a corner, I suppose.
I heard that with a pitcher of white wine in my hand and the folded statement flat against my ankle, and I poured his glass to the line and said nothing, because the man wasn't the enemy. He was just a person repeating the story he'd been handed at the door, the way you repeat the weather. 80 people had been handed that story. He was only the one close enough for me to hear say it out loud. Then Marcus came back through, on a circuit of the tables, the host making sure everyone felt seen, and he stopped at table 6 and put his hand on my shoulder for the benefit of the woman in the earrings.
He giving you good service? Dad, you don't have to work the whole room, I keep telling him. A laugh soft shared with the table. He likes to keep his hands busy. It's good for him. Right, Dad?
Hands like a job, I said.
See? He's happy. Get yourselves some cake. The lemon's the one. And he squeezed my shoulder once, the squeeze that said good boy to a room and stay down to me. And he moved on to table 7, and the woman in the earrings smiled at me now the way you smile at a dog that's been well-trained, warm and final, and asked me, gently, for the white.
I got the white. Every single time she asked, all night, and getting it was harder than anything that came after, because the minute I stopped pouring, I'd have become the unstable old man he'd promised them. So I poured, and I kept my hand steady, and I waited. The catering supervisor, the one who'd handed me the easy tray at the start and told me I'd be invisible by the 3rd table, caught up to me at the bus station by the kitchen doors. He took the empty pitcher out of my hands before I could set it down.
You don't have to keep doing this. You know that, right? You're not on my crew. Nobody's making you.
I know, I said.
Then why are you? No offense, I've worked a lot of these. I've never had a guest's father bus his own family's tables before.
Because the only thing worse than carrying the tray, I said, would be putting it down in front of all of them. He'd like that better than the carrying. Putting it down is the part he's waiting for. The man looked at me a moment, and whatever he'd been told about the old man in the apron, he set it aside.
That your son? The host?
That's my son.
Huh. He didn't say anything else about it. He just took the pitcher to the back and brought it back full, and he set it in my hands gentler than he had to, and he said one more thing before he went. Whatever this is, you're not invisible from where I'm standing, for what that's worth.
It's worth more than you'd think tonight, I said. And I meant it, because he was the first person in that hall in 2 hours to look at the apron and see the man inside it, and he wasn't even anybody I knew. Marcus caught me at the warming line on his next circuit, where the wall cut us off from the tables for a few feet, and he dropped the host's smile the second the room couldn't see his face. He held the car keys out flat on his palm. He'd had them ready.
Take them. I'm not asking now. You've made your point, whatever it is. Go sit in the car or go home. I don't care which, but you're done out here.
I'm not tired, I said.
This isn't about tired.
No, I said. It isn't. He looked at me then. Really looked. The way he hadn't all night. Because for the first time I'd handed him a sentence he couldn't file as confusion. And it sat wrong in him. He'd built a story about me and needed me to keep acting it. And I'd just stopped. With 2 words by a warming line, and the whole structure groaned where he couldn't see it.
What is that supposed to mean?
It means I know it isn't about tired. You've decided something about me, and you've told a lot of people, and now you need me to be small enough that the telling looks like kindness. I'm just not going to help you carry that part. The tray's fine. That one, no.
Listen to yourself. The telling. You hear how that sounds? That's the kind of thing I've been hearing from you for months. Everything's a story somebody's running on you. Everybody's against you. You know what that's called, Dad.
Tell me what it's called.
I'm not going to stand here and diagnose my own father at a party. I'm asking you to make it easy on all of us and go home.
You took the checkbook last spring, I said. That's the story Nadia's got. You took it because I was getting turned around with the bills. Is that the one?
I took it because you wrote the water company twice in 1 month and didn't remember the first. Because somebody had to.
I paid the water company twice in 1 month 34 years ago, the spring you were born, because your mother was in the hospital and I wasn't sleeping. She told that story at every table for 25 years. You've heard it 100 times. You took an old story of hers and put a date on it last spring and called it a symptom.
See? You remember every detail of 34 years ago. Funny how the memory only fails on the recent stuff. On the papers.
What papers, Marcus? You keep circling the word and never landing on it. If my memory's the problem, name the paper I forgot. Say it out loud here, where I can hear you say it.
I'm not doing this at a party.
You started it at a party. You handed me an apron at a party. Now you don't want to finish the sentence at a party. Which is it?
See, this is exactly it. You can't even tell what's a memory and what's an excuse anymore. You've got an answer for everything, and every answer is 34 years ago, and none of them are about the actual problem, which is right now, tonight, you standing here making a scene at your daughter's.
I haven't raised my voice once, I said. You've raised yours twice. Tell me which of us the room would call the calm one if they could hear this corner.
Keep your voice down.
It's already down. It's been down all night. That's what's bothering you. That stopped him, because it was true, and because true was the one thing his story had no slot for.
You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know half of what I've had to manage this year. The things I've kept off your plate so you could go on being the noble old man who never asks for anything. You have no idea what I've already handled.
Then tell me, I said. Right here. What have you handled, Marcus?
You think this family runs on your envelopes. It doesn't. It runs on me now. The house, the bills, the future of it. I've taken hold of more than you'd believe, and you signed off on every bit of it without reading a word, because that's what you do. You sign and you trust, and you call it love. You'll see. By the time you understand what I've put in place, it'll already be...
He stopped himself 1 word short of the cliff. I watched the rest of the sentence come up the back of his throat. The thing he was proud of and could not say, because the having to keep it secret was the only part costing him, and for half a second the pride nearly beat the secret. Already be what? I said.
Done. Settled. The way it should be. And he swallowed the rest and put the smile back on like a coat he'd left on a hook. Tomorrow. We'll sit down tomorrow, you and me, and I'll walk you through all of it, slow so you follow it. Tonight you're embarrassing your daughter and you're going to go home. He pressed the keys at my chest. Take the keys, Dad.
Keep them, I said. I came in a chair I'll leave in. You go be the host. People are waiting for you to tell them how well it's all going. That last one landed somewhere he didn't expect, because his jaw set and he closed his hand back over the keys, and he went. Fast, for him, the unhurried host suddenly walking like a man with somewhere to be. And I understood I'd found, by accident, the one seam in him. He could survive being disobeyed, but not being seen mid-performance by the audience he was performing for. I filed that, and didn't know yet what it was worth. It was Nadia who started to turn first, and I felt it before I understood it, the way you feel weather change before the sky shows you why. I'd thought she was just embarrassed, that she'd looked at her plate all night because that's how you survive watching your father get handed an apron in front of your whole graduating class. But it was becoming something else. She'd stopped circulating. She was standing near the head table turning a paper napkin into a smaller and smaller square, and her eyes kept coming back to the same place. The chair by the door nobody had greeted, where a woman in a plain dark suit sat with a slim folder flat on her knees, watching the night the way nobody else in the room was watching it. Watching it like a person who already knew how it ended. A girl who's been told her father is failing reads a room fast once the room stops matching the telling. Nadia couldn't have said what was wrong. What she could see was the shape of it. That a stranger nobody had set a place for had been sitting by the door all evening, calm, not eating, not leaving, with her eyes on the one man the family had carried out to the kitchen, and on no one else. A guest with no place and no greeting is the one shape a room can't put away, and my daughter had stopped being able to put it away. Then Marcus drifted to the head table with a fresh glass and leaned down to say something in his sister's ear. I was close enough on my way back to catch the shape of it.
Don't go over there, Nadia. He's roped some woman into his thing. I told you he'd make tonight about him. Just smile, let it pass, we'll deal with him tomorrow.
The old Nadia would have nodded. She'd nodded for 3 weeks. This Nadia turned her head a few degrees and held her brother in a flat, unhurried stare. No heat in it, no chill, just the weighing kind of look a person lands on someone whose explanations have started running a tab she's no longer sure she wants to pay.
You keep saying we'll deal with him. Deal with him how? You said he was confused. He doesn't look confused. He looks like the only person in this room who knows exactly what's going on.
Marcus's sentence ran out before it finished. He covered it the way he covered everything, smooth, a laugh laid over the gap.
That's the thing about it, kid. It looks like clarity right up until it doesn't. You'll understand when you're older.
Stop telling me I'll understand when I'm older. You've been telling me that since I was 9. Why does everyone keep telling me about Dad and money? 3 weeks ago, it was papers. Tonight, it's the side door. What is the money, Marcus?
There's no money. There's a tired old man who can't be trusted to read his own bank statement anymore, and a family that's trying to protect him from himself. And I would think his own daughter could manage a little gratitude for the one person actually doing the protecting.
Protecting him from what?
From exactly this. From a Saturday where he ropes a stranger into a corner and you start looking at me like I'm the problem.
I had come up beside them by then with the pitcher, close enough that not speaking would have been its own kind of lie. So I set the pitcher down on the cloth, and I said the only thing I let myself say in that room before the room was ready. Nadia, look at me.
Dad.
Look at me. Am I reading you wrong right now? Do I have a single thing turned around? Your name, the year, where we are, why we're here?
No.
Then you've got everything you need for tonight. You don't need to know the money. You need to know I'm not lost. Hold that, and let the rest of it come when it comes. Can you do that for me?
Dad, you're standing here in an apron.
I know what I'm standing in. I also know who tied it on me and why, and so will you, before the night's out. Just don't let anybody tell you I didn't know my own daughter at her own party. That's the only lie I'd mind you believing.
Who tied it on you? She wasn't asking me. She'd turned to her brother. You said the catering company put him to work because he wandered into the kitchen and wouldn't leave. That's what you told me at my table, that he wandered in.
Nadia, this is not the...
Did he wander in, or did you hand him the apron? It's a yes or no, Marcus. You were standing right there. Did the staff give it to him, or did you?
He didn't answer it. That was the answer, and Nadia heard the not answering the way you hear a step that doesn't come.
You handed your own father an apron in front of my whole class, and then told me the catering company did it. Why would you lie about something that's small unless? She stopped, because the unless was a door She wasn't ready to walk through in a crowded room, and she was smart enough to know it.
Because I was trying to spare you exactly this. This spiral. This is what happens. This is what I've been managing for 3 weeks. One little thing and you're off, building a case, just like he does. You sound like him right now. You know that?
Maybe that's not the insult you think it is.
Marcus stepped in fast and put a hand on her shoulder and steered her a half step back, the way you move a person away from a draft.
Okay. That's enough cryptic for one night, Dad. You see what I mean, sweetheart? This is what I've been managing. Go find your friends. Let me handle him.
A server stepped in with a tray of champagne and broke it. More for the table? And Marcus took 2 glasses he didn't need and pressed one into Nadia's hand to give her something to hold instead of a question, and she took it, and she did not drink it. She set it down on the cloth and left it sweating there. But before she set it down, she did a small thing I don't think she knew I caught. She looked over at the chair by the door, at the quiet woman nobody had greeted, and she stayed looking a beat too long, the way you look at a face you can't place but your body insists you should. Then she leaned to Marcus, and I was close enough with the picture to hear it.
Who is that? By the door, the woman in the dark suit. I keep thinking I know her face and I can't. Marcus, who invited her?
Nobody invited her. That's the point. She's one of his, sweetheart. Some sad 'cause Dad's picked up. Don't look at her. You look at her, you encourage him.
And Nadia did the thing that told me the seam had opened wider than even she knew. She looked anyway. She held the woman by the door in her eyes for 1 more second, against her brother's instruction, and something crossed her face that she couldn't have named. Not recognition, not quite, but the shadow of it, the feeling you get a half-second before a name arrives. Then she made herself look away, and her jaw was tight, and I watched my youngest file a question she didn't have the pieces for yet, and I knew she would not stop turning it over for the rest of the night. She didn't come to me. I want to be careful here, because the story you expect is the daughter sweeping across the floor with tears in her eyes, and that was not my daughter, and not that night. She stayed put. She folded the napkins smaller. Once, and only once, she found my eyes from across the room, and where the kind, embarrassed pity had been all evening, there was now a blank, which from Nadia was a brand new thing to receive. The sorrow had drained out of her face. So had whatever sat under the sorrow holding it up. A breath later, Marcus said something that should have made her laugh, and she did laugh, except it arrived a beat behind where it should have, and a laugh that comes in late is a laugh a person is choosing to perform. Nothing had given way yet. But a seam had opened in the one person my son could least afford to have stop believing him, and it was traveling down toward the footings, and neither he nor I could measure yet how far. I crossed back toward the kitchen doors with the empty pitcher, the long way, past the chair by the entrance, and for the first time all night I let myself look straight at the woman sitting in it. She looked back. She did not get up. She did not beckon. She only held my eyes for the length of a breath and gave me the smallest tip of her chin, not a greeting, not a question, a thing closer to a clock telling you the hour is nearly here. And then she looked away again, out at the room, calm, the folder flat on her knees. We did not trade a word. We didn't need to. Whatever was folded inside that folder, she had carried it 1,100 miles to lay down in this room and no other, and she had told me, plainly an hour earlier, that I would hear it once and clean, and in front of the people who clapped, and not twice and badly in a hallway. She had kept the folder shut against her ribs all evening to keep that promise. I was not going to be the one who broke it open early. So I held the line she'd drawn. I did not go to her. I did not ask. And what I felt then was not what I'd expected. Not heat. I'd pictured this going loud, pictured myself landing the one sentence that would peel the host's smile off my son. Instead, a stillness came over me, the kind you feel when an argument is already decided somewhere out of the room, and only the announcing is left. What remained was the ring against my chest and the patience to let a thing be seen rather than swung. A woman flies 1,100 miles to sit by a door for a man who never took credit for raising her and asks for nothing and waits. Is that a debt? Or is that family? Tell me. I looked back across the ballroom from my post, the apron folded on the service stand, the tray going cold, the chair nobody had set for me by the swinging doors where the staff comes and goes, and I understood, the way you understand a thing too late and too early at once, that the door my son had stationed me at, the last insult door, the place for the man who's only good to carry things, was the same door the quiet woman by the entrance would walk to when she was done waiting. He'd meant it as the lowest place in the room. He had no idea who else belonged at it. She stayed in the chair by the entrance, the folder flat on her knees, her eyes on me and not on Marcus, and she put the last of it in my hands, the one thing she would not take for herself, the moment it began. Across the floor, my son lifted his glass, the host, the room in his palm, mid-sentence, telling some story that ended with him. Nadia stood near him, not drinking the wine she'd set down. The band held a note, and I felt the ring against my chest, and the folded paper under my cuff, and 16 years of a promise my wife made to a girl at a too-strong cup of tea. All of it gathered into the smallest motion a man can make. I looked at Adeze in the chair by the door nobody had greeted, and I gave her the nod. She rose. She rose, and the room did not know yet that anything had happened. That is the part I keep returning to. A woman in a plain, dark suit stood up from a chair by the door, and for 3 or 4 seconds she was nobody. A late guest finally getting on her feet, a caterer's coordinator, a friend of a friend who'd grown tired of sitting. 80 people had spent the whole night not seeing her. They went on not seeing her while she walked. She crossed the floor at the pace of a person who is not in a hurry, because she does not have to be. The folder flat against her ribs, and the only 2 people in the room who tracked her the whole way were my daughter, who had stopped pretending to laugh, and me, by the kitchen doors, with a tray going cold beside me and a ring against my chest. She did not come to me, she went to my son. Marcus was mid-story at the head table, glass up, the room in his palm, telling the kind of story that ends with the man telling it. He felt her before he placed her, the way you feel a draft and look for the window. He turned, still smiling, ready to be gracious to whoever this was, ready to fold a stranger into his evening the way a host folds in everything.
Can I help you? We're a little into the program here, so if you're with the venue...
I'm with the venue.
She said it lightly, almost kindly, and then she let it sit just long enough that the first cold thread went through him, because a man who has booked a hall knows the difference between a coordinator saying it and whatever this was.
Marcus, we've never met, but I've read more of your handwriting than your sister has. I want to do this in front of the room, because you did the other thing in front of the room, and I think the room should get both halves on the same night. My name is Adeze Okonkwo. I'm the general counsel for Marwick Holdings.
The name meant nothing to the 80. It meant a great deal to one of them. I watched it reach my son the way water reaches the lowest part of a floor, finding the level, and I watched his face do the arithmetic he had spent 3 weeks making sure no one else in the family could do.
Marwick Holdings owns this building. It owns the parking structure you valeted these people through and the 4 others like it in this state. The lease on this hall, the one you signed in March, the one that let you stand up tonight and act like a man who owns a room, is a lease with my company. Not with your money. With my signature on the other side of yours. You've been renting the stage you used to put your father by the kitchen door.
Nobody laughed. The band had stopped between songs and not started the next one, the way a band does when it can read a room better than the people in it, and into that gap her voice carried without her ever raising it. I have thought a great deal about why she never raised it. I think it was because the volume was the one thing she didn't need. She had the only thing in the room that mattered, which was the paper, and a person holding the paper can afford to speak the way you speak across a kitchen table.
Okay. All right. I don't know what my father told you or what he's gotten confused about, but this is my sister's night, and I'm not going to let some...
Don't.
One word. She set it down flat between them, and he stopped on it.
Don't use that one tonight, the confused one. You've gotten a lot of road out of it. You drove it into your sister for 3 weeks and into this room for 1 evening, and I am about to take it away from you. So I'd put it down on your own before I do. Because it's going to look worse coming out of my hands than out of yours.
She opened the folder. I had watched that folder stay shut for 2 hours. In a hallway full of steam, with no one but me to see it, she had held it against her ribs and refused to flip a single page, and I had understood without being told that she was saving it for the place it could do its work. This was the place. She opened it on the corner of the head table, between a centerpiece and a half-eaten slice of cake, and she turned it so the light fell on the first page, and she did not hand it to him. She let him look at it from where he stood. The way you let a man look at a thing he already knows is his.
This is a loan application. It was filed about 3 weeks ago to draw equity out of a house at 14 Holloway Lane. That's your father's house. Free and clear. Paid off over 22 years, deed in his name. There is nothing to borrow against a paid-off house unless the owner agrees to it in writing in a consent box with his own hand. So let's look at the consent box.
She moved one page over the other, slow, the way a person turns a page when she wants the turning itself to be heard.
Here is your father's signature, at the bottom, where you pointed and called it insurance. And here, above it, in the owner consent box, here is your father's signature again. Except your father wasn't at a desk in a bank the day this box was filled. He was at his own kitchen table, signing the bottom of a stack you handed him. The box was answered later. By a different hand. By yours.
You can't read a signature off a copy and decide whose hand.
I don't have to decide. The state does that now. But I can read this, and so can everyone standing here, so I'll read it out loud. She put her finger on a line lower on the page. Borrower's statement of occupancy, required field. Somebody had to tell the lender who lives in the house and what their standing is. And the answer your application gives, the answer in your company's own system, time-stamped, the night you filed it, is this. The owner of record is listed as a tenant in default. Eviction pending.
I want to tell you what those 4 words did in that room, because they did more than the apron had, and the apron had been the wound I walked in with. Tenant in default. Eviction pending. A father, on the deed of a house he paid off across 22 years, entered by his own son into a bank's machine as a renter being put out. Most of the 80 did not follow the paperwork. They didn't have to. They followed the arithmetic of it, which is older than any loan. A man builds a house, finishes the house, stands in the driveway, and is told nobody can take it now. And his son types him into a box that takes it. You don't need to know what equity is to feel that land. The room felt it land. Somebody set a glass down too hard. A woman near the windows put her hand over her mouth and left it there.
So that the equity would answer to you, and to no one else, you didn't just forge his consent. You had to make the file say he had no claim to be consenting. You turned the man who holds the deed into a deadbeat renter you were evicting. On paper, tonight, in my company's system, the man you walked to the kitchen door an hour ago is being thrown out of his own house. By you. That's the second signature. That's why I flew here.
When I saw my own signature forged on a consent line I never signed, I stopped calling it a mistake. I'd called it carelessness for 3 weeks. I'd lent my son the gentle word the way I'd lent him everything else. Because a father reaches for the version of his child that lets him keep being a father. What would you have called it? Standing there, looking at your name written by a hand you taught to write. Marcus did the only thing left to a man whose floor has gone. He appealed to the room.
This is insane. Look at all of you. You're letting a woman none of us invited walk in off the street and slanders. Dad, tell them. Tell them what's actually been going on with you. Tell them about the appointments.
I did not tell them anything. I stood where he'd put me, by the kitchen doors, and I let his sentence run off the end of the table and fall. He'd built a whole bridge out of my supposed confusion, and he kept walking onto it after the planks were gone. because it was the only bridge he'd built and he had no other way across. The room did not follow him onto it. That was the thing he couldn't recover from. For 3 weeks the story had held because nothing in any room refused it. Now the woman by the door had refused it with paper, and once a room watches one true thing land, it stops lending the liar the benefit it had been lending him all night.
He's not going to tell them anything, Marcus, because there's nothing to tell. I sat with him for 2 hours tonight. He set a tray down steadier than you're standing now. The confusion was never his. It was a thing you needed to be true so that nobody, not your sister, not this room, not a loan officer, would ask why your father's house was being emptied while he smiled and carried drinks. You didn't find him failing. You needed him to be failing, and when he wouldn't, you told people he was.
Then she did the thing she'd come on a plane to do, and she did it the way she did everything that night, without heat, in the plain present tense, so there could be no mistaking it for a threat she might not keep.
So here is what happens now, while everyone's still in the room. Effective tonight, Marwick Holdings is terminating your lease on this hall and every Marwick property your brokerage holds paper on. The financing your firm runs through our preferred line is pulled, as of this conversation. Ms. Tran?
A woman I had not noticed all evening stood up from a table near the back. She had a leather folio and the calm of a person who has done this in quieter rooms many times. She came forward and set 2 pages beside Adaz's folder, and she spoke once to Marcus, with no unkindness and no give.
Mr. Ellison, I'm with Marwick's finance office. This is formal notice that your master lease is terminated for cause under the fraud clause, effective immediately, and notice that the equity line tied to the Holloway application is frozen pending the state's review. You'll want counsel. These have already been served to your firm's registered agent as of 6 o'clock this evening. I'm handing you the courtesy copies.
She set them down. He did not pick them up. They sat there next to the cake.
And the forged consent and the false occupancy statement. Your signature in the owner's box. Your father entered as a tenant in default. Those went to the state fraud unit 2 days ago. There's a case number. I walked the pages in myself before I drove to the airport. That part isn't mine to undo, and it isn't yours. The charges are referred. They'll be reviewed by people who do not care whose graduation it is. I'm not telling you that to frighten you. I'm telling you so you stop performing for a room that already knows, and so you understand that the slow part started Thursday and the loud part is only happening now because I decided your father shouldn't have to feel it land in a letter.
I have been asked since whether I felt something break loose in me then. Vindication. People want it to be. It was not that. What I felt was the strange quiet of watching a thing you'd carried alone for 3 weeks get lifted off you by someone with the strength to lift it and set down where everyone could see its actual weight. I had carried one mismatched line on a bank statement in my wallet and called it a worry. She had set the whole thing on a head table next to a slice of cake and named it in front of the people who'd clapped for the man who built it. Then she reached into the side of the folder and took out one more thing, and she set it on the white cloth where the light could find it, and the room, which had gone quiet, went quieter. It was a thin band of gold. She did not explain it to them. She turned, away from Marcus, away from the table, and she found me by the doors, and for the first time all evening she spoke to the room about me instead of to my son about himself, and her voice did not climb even then.
I want to say one thing to all of you, and then I'll let your night go on, because she earned a night. She looked toward Nadia, then back out at the faces. The man your host walked to the kitchen door tonight and called the help. The man you let him walk there, because it was easier than asking why, paid for the schooling of all 3 of his children, quietly, through a fund none of them were supposed to find. 2 of those children are in this room. I'm the 3rd.
I had not known she would say that last part. I had raised her not to say it. 16 years of a check that covered her school and a promise I'd made to my wife to never once take credit for it. And she stood in a banquet hall and put herself on the list, 3rd child, in front of 80 strangers. and I understood that she was doing for me the one thing I had spent my whole life refusing to do for myself, which was to let the room know who had been feeding it.
His wife took me in when I was 13 and my mother had just died. She made him promise to raise me like his own and never tell me who was paying. He kept both promises for 16 years. I only found out the year I passed the bar when I pulled the filing myself and saw his name. So no, he was never the catering help. He was the reason a girl with no family finished law school. The reason I can stand here tonight and end the lease on the room he was thrown out of is a thing he built, on purpose when no one was looking, and asked no one to thank him for. I'm not going to let the last version of him in this room be the one your host gave you.
A woman somewhere near the front began, quietly, to cry, and I do not think it was for me. I think it was for the simple machine of it that everyone in the room had just watched run. The way a family will agree, quietly and all at once, on the smaller version of a man, because the smaller version asks less of them, and the way that agreement holds right up until one person refuses to sign it. That should have been the end. I thought it was the end. The lease was pulled, the financing gone, the forgery referred, my name about to be lifted off a renter's line it never belonged on. I had walked in a man at a side door, and I was going to walk out a man on a deed. If she had closed the folder there, it would have been more than I dared imagine when I tied on the apron. She did not close the folder. She turned one more page. And this is where the night stopped being about what my son had done in a corner and became about who he actually was. And I'll tell it the way it came, slow. Because it is the part I'd been getting wrong for 3 weeks, and the part you've maybe been getting wrong since I started. I had a story I'd been telling myself in the corridor, the kind everyone tells. The brokerage was failing. The creditors were closing in. The house was the last asset he could reach, and a cornered man does an ugly thing because the wall is at his back. I'd half built him a defense out of pity while she talked, because that is what a father does even while the evidence of the crime sits next to the cake. He reaches for the reason that lets the boy still be the boy. Adayezi had told me, in the hallway, to wait for the room before I took that story. There's a page that decides whether he was cornered or comfortable, she'd said, and I won't let you read it in a hallway where it can't do its work. She read it now.
About 5 weeks before tonight, my company, because we're also one of your creditors, Marcus, which you knew and your father didn't, sent your firm a restructuring offer, a clean one. It rolled your short-term notes into a single term at a rate you could actually carry, gave you 18 months of breathing room, and it required nothing. No new collateral, no personal guarantee. And specifically, in writing, on the second page, it touched none of your family's property. Not the house, not your father, a door out with his name nowhere on it.
She held the page up, not to him, to the room, the way you hold up a thing you want witnessed.
You signed the acknowledgement of receipt. Right here, read and understood. Your hand, the real one this time, dated. And then you didn't take it. You didn't counter it. You didn't call. You let it lapse in silence, and about 2 weeks later you filed the application that forged your father's consent and listed him as a tenant in default.
He had a door. He read it. He locked it himself. I am changing how I tell this now because I want you in the present tense with me, the way it landed in the present tense on me. He is not a drowning man grabbing the nearest hand. He is a man standing on dry ground, holding a clean way out in one hand that costs him nothing, who sets it down. Because the clean way out makes him split the brokerage and the breathing room with no one but the bank, and forging his father's name lets him keep all of it, and erasing his father from the deed lets him own the house alone after I'm gone. He doesn't forge me because he's cornered. He forges me because forging me is cheaper than sharing and quieter than asking, and he'd rather his father be a renter on a page than a name he has to split a house with. The pity went out of me the way a pilot light goes out. No drama to it, just a small thing that had been burning quietly for 3 weeks, gone, and the corridor in my chest, where I'd been keeping his defense, suddenly empty and clean. I'd needed it to be desperation. Desperation I could grieve. Desperation has a son still inside it somewhere. But he'd read the door and locked it, on a Tuesday, at a desk, calm, and then he'd driven to a banquet hall and put an apron in my hands and pointed me at the side entrance. And those were the same hands, the door locking and the apron pushing, the same calm in both. Marcus had stopped trying the room. He looked at the page she was holding, the one with his real signature and the word "understood" next to it, and whatever a man has behind his face when the last story goes, he had it then. And he turned it toward the only person in the room he thought might still be running on the old script.
Nadia, come on. You know me. You know him. You've watched him forget where he parked. You're going to take a stranger's word over your own family's, over your own brother, on the worst night of...
Stop.
My daughter had set down the wine an hour ago and never picked it back up. She'd been folding a napkin into a smaller and smaller square through all of it, and somewhere in the last few minutes she'd stopped folding, and now she stood up, 18 years old, the gown still on, the cap in her hand, and she didn't cross to me and she didn't cross to him. She stood where she was, between us, which is the hardest place in any room to stand.
You told me he was confused. You told me that for 3 weeks. You sat in my apartment, and you told me we had to watch what he signed, that his memory was going, that I shouldn't believe what he said about money. And tonight you put an apron on him in front of my whole class and walked him to the kitchen like he was nobody, and I looked at my plate. I looked at my plate, Marcus, because you told me a story about my own father, and I believed it because you're my brother, and why would my brother lie to me about Dad?
Her voice did not break. I want that on the record, because the version of this people expect is a girl in tears, and that was not my daughter. She'd run out of the sorrow in the corridor an hour before. What was left was flatter and worse for him than tears.
He paid for my school, he paid for yours. He paid for hers and never told any of us. And the whole time you were telling me he couldn't be trusted with money, you were the one stealing the house. You used me. You used the fact that I'd believe you. That's the part I can't. You didn't just do it to him. You made me help you do it to him by sitting there and looking at my plate.
Nadia, I'm your brother.
He's my father. You're the one who taught me there's a difference.
That landed harder than anything the paper did, because the paper came from a stranger, and that came from his sister. And a man can argue with a general counsel, but he cannot argue with the kid he raised the lie inside of. He looked from her to me and found nothing in either face he could use, and the host's smile, which had been gone for a while, didn't come back. He picked his glass up off the table, not the courtesy copies, just the glass, an old reflex, and he set it down again, and there was nowhere in the room for him to be the man he'd been when the night started. I'll tell you what didn't happen, because it's as much the point as what did. I did not cross the floor and confront him. I did not make the speech I'd half-written in the corridor, the one that would finally peel the smile off. I'd thought, walking in with the tray, that the night would turn on me finding the right sentence. It didn't. It turned on a folder a woman carried 1,100 miles and held shut until the room was ready, and on a daughter who stopped looking at her plate. I just stood by the kitchen doors and let it be seen. The man who paid for everything, standing a little to the side while the people he raised did the carrying for once. The party did not really go on after that, whatever Adeyezi had offered the room. People found their coats. The 80 who'd watched my son walk me to the side door filed out the front one past the chair nobody had greeted, and a few of them looked at me on the way, and I gave them the same small nod I'd give anyone, because I had nothing to collect from them. They'd agreed on the small version of me because it was easier, and I'd spent a lifetime making the small version easy. That was a thing I'd think about later, quietly, and not for them. Marcus left through the front. I'll say only that part. He did not use the side door, and he did not say goodbye to his sister, and the courtesy copies stayed on the table next to the cake until a caterer cleared them with the plates. The state will do what the state does on its own schedule, with its own people, who do not care whose graduation it was. The charges referred, the file moving, the clawback on the equity he'd drawn frozen while the law decides where it belongs. None of that was mine to drive. I want to be plain about that, the way Adaizi was plain about everything. I did not bring my son down. He read a door and locked it, and a woman I raised carried the proof into a room, and the law took it from there. I just stopped lending him the gentle word. It was late by the time the hall emptied, past midnight. The band had packed out, the chairs were half stacked, a single line of work lights on over the warming station, the great room gone dark and echoing the way a room gets when the noise it was built for has left it. I was still by the kitchen doors. I think I'd have stood there till morning if no one came, out of an old habit of waiting in doorways, which my wife used to catch me at and call standing guard over a party that doesn't know it needs guarding. Nadia came back first. She'd changed out of the gown into the jeans she'd had in the car, and she had her diploma in its leather folder under her arm, and she came across the dark floor not fast, the way you cross to someone when you don't have the words yet and you've decided to go anyway. She stopped in front of me. The apron was still over my forearm where I'd carried it folded since I took it off, the cheap white one with the catering company's name stitched in red, the one my son had pushed into my hands at the start of the night. She didn't make a speech. I'd been bracing for one and it didn't come, and the not coming was the kindest thing she could have done, because a speech would have made it about getting forgiven and she didn't want that yet and neither did I. She reached out and took the apron off my arm, folded it once more, smaller, the way you fold a thing you're putting away for good and not for laundry, and she set it down on the service stand by the doors, the same stand I'd set the tray on hours before, and she put her diploma in its leather folder into my hands instead, into the same two hands. She pressed them closed around it.
You hold it. You're the reason it's mine. You should be the one holding it.
That was all she said. Nadia handed me her diploma instead of the apron, and she never made a speech. I have wondered since whether a sentence would have made it better or worse. I think worse. I think the diploma in my two hands said the thing better than any sentence she could have built, and she knew it, because she was always the one of the three who understood that you can say the largest things by handing someone the right object and keeping your mouth shut. Adaiz came last, out of the dark at the far end where she'd been on the phone with someone whose night we'd also just changed. She crossed the empty floor and stopped beside Nadia, and she didn't say anything either, and I realized the two of them had decided without a word between them that I saw that this was not a part of the night for talking. She held up her left hand for me to see. The thin band of gold she'd set on the white cloth in front of the whole room, my wife's wedding ring, the one I'd given her the day she passed the bar, the one I'd carried in my breast pocket all night because it was the only thing in the building that could say who she was to me, was back on her finger. She'd slipped it on at some point in the dark while the room emptied, and now she turned her hand a little under the work light so the gold caught it, and she held it out toward me, and she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The ring had been absent from the table all night, the one empty place in a room full of set places, the chair nobody greeted. Now it was on the hand of the girl my wife took in a dark hall my son had just lost, on the night the room learned who'd been feeding it. My wife used to say nobody can take it now about a house. The ring said it about a person. I went and found the tray. It was still where I'd left it on the stand, the stuffed mushrooms gone, the catering crew having cleared everything but the one tray nobody claimed. I picked it up, and then I did a thing that I think my wife would have understood faster than I did, because she understood objects the way Nadia does. There was a kettle still warm on the warming line, and 3 clean cups upside down on a rack, and I made 3 teas, too strong, the way she always made them, because that is the only way I know how. And I put the 3 cups on the tray my son had pushed into my hands to mark me a servant, and I carried them across the dark floor to a small table by the kitchen, the staff table, the one with the bad light, and I set a cup down for Nadia, and a cup down for Adaiz, and a cup down for me. He put a tray in my hand so the room would see a servant. My daughter put her diploma there instead. The same hands. I carried 3 teas to the kitchen table and nobody used the side door. We sat at the staff table in the empty hall, the 3 of us, under the one bad light. And we drank the 2 strong tea, and for a long while nobody said anything at all. The diploma was on the table by my cup. The ring was on her hand. The apron was folded on the service stand where Nadia had left it, and it could stay there for the morning crew, because it had never been mine and it wasn't anymore. There was a 4th cup I hadn't poured, and I looked at the empty place where it would have gone, by long habit, and then I looked at the 2 faces that were there, and I let the 4th place be what it was, which was hers, and which was all right. Adai's was the one who finally spoke, and she didn't say anything large. She put her cup down and looked at the dark room around us, the stacked chairs, the dead bandstand, the long tables stripped to the cloth, the room my son had borrowed to be a man in front of 80 people, and she said the smallest true thing in it.
She made hers too strong on purpose. I always thought it was a mistake until I was old enough to know nobody makes the same mistake for 16 years.
She'd say the strong tea was the only kind that kept a person honest at a table.
I know. She poured 3 cups the first night and saved one for an empty chair, the one she said would be yours when you got home. She turned the cup a quarter turn on its saucer, the way she'd turned the folder shut against her ribs all night. I sat in a chair by that door for 2 hours tonight and nobody greeted it. I didn't mind. I knew which chair it was the second I walked in.
Nadia didn't follow all of it. The chair and the tea and the woman who'd poured both, because she'd been too young for the kitchen Adaize grew up in. But she reached over and turned her own cup the same quarter turn, matching it without being told, the way the youngest in a family learns a gesture before she learns the reason for it, and the 3 cups sat squared on the staff table like 3 people who'd finally found the right table to sit at. I don't know yet what the morning brings. The case has a number and a queue, and people I'll never meet deciding things on a calendar I don't control. The house will come back clean, they tell me. The renter's line struck off. The deed plain again, the way my wife and I left it in the driveway the day we paid it off. There's a fund with her name on it that's about to be quite a bit larger than it was, and a next kid somewhere it'll find, the way it found Adaize, the way my wife meant it to. That's the work that's left, and it's the good kind. And I'll do it the way I do everything, quietly, off to the side, where the thanks can't reach me. But there's one thing I haven't told you, the thing I found in the morning when the hall was long behind us, and it's the reason I'm telling you any of this at all. Because when I got home that night and went to put the ring's empty box back in the drawer, there was a second envelope under it I'd never seen. In my wife's handwriting, sealed 9 years, with 3 names on the front, and only 2 of them are the children I raised. I'll tell you whose the 3rd name is. Until next time.